Okay, so welcome back, and I know you guys have been very eager to see the second part on this McLaren repaint that we're doing. So in this video we are starting off with the third coat of candy on this McLaren, and then we're going to move on to the clear coat stage just after that. Obviously, if you're joining us early on part 2 and you haven't seen part 1 yet, then I will leave the link in the description to part 1, so go and check that out before you check out part 2. So I have to say, part 1 on this video has got a lot of views already in its first couple of days since putting it live, and I know you guys have been very eager to see this one, so I thought I'd get this edited extra early for you and put it on a premiere so I could join you and have a chat along with the video premiere. Now, for the third coat of candy on this car, we are going to do this the same as we did the first coat that you saw in part 1. We're just going to take a time, make sure we get all these edges everywhere, and pay special attention, especially on your last coat, to your edges. You want to make sure at this stage that you have got full coverage, not just on the open areas that you can see and on the larger areas, but also on all these little edges and little bits, and even the edges of the swage lines and stuff can be really easy to miss with candy. So it's always best to take your time on the candy side, which is why I know in the first video we got a few comments saying that this Segola looks quite slow. I have to say the Segola is putting out quite a lot of candy, and also we have got the Segola turned down because we want to take a time. I would rather do this car in 3 coats and have the candy absolutely perfectly even than try and hammer it on in 2 coats and have unevenness in the candy or have any missed edges or anything like that. Now, when we did finish this coat, we did use the colour check light again, and I believe we used the LPH 80 from Iwata to go around all the little edges and just tickle in any extra little bits that we couldn't get to with the big gun, and just make sure that everything was 100% covered before we even thought about moving on towards the clear coat stage. We then let that all the blow-ins of the candy that we did with the LPH dry off, gave the full car a retack down again before we went out and mixed the clear coat. Again, we gave it around about a 30-minute flash off to let all the solvents out of all these layers evaporate properly and dry through, because at this stage we've got 3 layers of the ground coat and we've also got 3 layers of candy, so we're up to 6 coats already. And obviously we're going to put 2 really heavy coats of clear over the top of that, so we want to make sure that everything is fully dried through before we move on to the next stage of putting any more colour on this car or any more clear on this car. Because one thing that we especially don't want is any trap solvents under the surface of the clear, because they're going to breathe through the clear coat when it's drying and when it's on bake, and then obviously that's going to leave imperfections or even really dull off the final clear coat finish on this car, and then we're going to end up with horrendous problems even having to re-clear it or have a very extensive flat and polish job on it, and a very harsh flat and polish job on it. Now, as far as this car goes, when it's done, I know it's going to have quite a few nibs. It's going to have had, what, 8 coats of colour and clear by the time it's finished. So it's going to be a lot of paint and there's a lot of time in the booth. So the chance of getting any dust or anything in this is quite high anyway. But because the booth was completely clean before we started, any little bits that will be in the finish will just be a tiny bit of any overspray dust or anything like that, so it won't be an issue in the final finish or the final colour of the car. However, for the clear coat stage, my main focus was getting the build on the car so that we can give it a full mirror finish, flat and polish, because to me this isn't the kind of car that you want to leave a gun finish, no matter how good your gun finish is or isn't. For me, this is the kind of car that wants a full mirror finish, flat and polished, top to bottom, because it's that kind of level of car and that kind of price range of car that deserves your top level of detail and putting out the best that you can do, really. And I know as far as dust goes, a few of you guys said in the first video I should be wearing gloves and I should be wearing the hood up on my paint suit and I should have my sleeves rolled up. But I've got to be honest, we've turned the booth up on this day to 30 degrees. It was absolutely sweltering in the booth, to try and aid the flash off on all these coats of paint, and also to make this a little bit easier with it being solvent, so that solvents could evaporate out quicker to reduce any risk of fry ups or anything. And personally, I always paint with my sleeves rolled up. It's just something that I do. It may not be right, and I never wear a hood because I'm always wearing a cap when I'm in the booth, because I find that if I don't, then my GoPro digs in when I'm trying to film. Now if I'm not filming, then I will wear a hood. So it's a kind of catch-22 when I'm trying to do videos for YouTube sometimes, because I can't always do things exactly as I would. It's just not physically possible. A lot of the things that I do, say when I'm doing repair work, I'll be doing things from a lot of a different angle or from a different aspect, or I might be filming in the booth and sanding in the booth, and that's for the benefit of you guys, so you guys see a better and clearer view of the work that I'm doing, or the spray job that we're doing, or the repair work that we're doing, or anything like that. So we do have to actually change a lot of things around in the shop just in order to film. I mean, currently we're in the process of redoing all the booth walls again, to re-white all the booth walls, and that is purely for the better look on the videos, because the whiter the walls, the cleaner the spray booth, then the better the video quality comes out for you guys. So there is a lot of aspects like that that we have to take into daily life in the shop, just because we do obviously make these videos. And say for instance, on a day like when we did the first GYS video that we put up, when Dan came over, we actually had to shut our shop for the whole day in order to make that video, and spent a full 8 hours with the doors closed on the workshop, not doing any paint work, in order to be able to film the video and be able to film all the different aspects and all the different angles and everything, to be able to get that footage for you. So there is a lot to take into account. I know it might be a case of you might look at a video sometimes and think, oh well, they should do that slightly different, or they should do that slightly different, and that's fair enough, but at the end of the day, everybody sprays different. You know, I've seen guys spraying in the booth without a mask on. I'm not the dad. If they want to go and spray without a mask on, that's up to them. Would I recommend it? No, but it's up to them at the end of the day. But back to the job in hand, we have almost now finished this last coat of candy, so we're getting towards the stage that I know a lot of you guys love to see, which is getting around towards the clear coat stage. And I have got a little bit of a surprise for you guys in a bit of a one-off spray gun that I'll be using on this job today, that I've actually done for myself in my own shop. As part of the new business that we've just opened, I've just done myself a little custom spray gun, and for quite some time now I've kind of really fancied having my own one, just branded up just for me in the shop, you know, not to put them up for sale or anything like that, but I just quite fancied one of those just to use in video works. Thought it'd be quite nice to go along with the YouTube channel, to have my own gun to go along with it. Now for the clear coat side of this car, I have actually done something quite differently to what I normally would. Normally, obviously you guys know that I love my Chronox 610, but the shop that Kerry runs, he uses a lot of the MIPA products, so we decided to use the MIPA CC9 clear coat on this. It was my first time using the CC9 on this job. I've never sprayed it before, I've never tried it before, I've not even done a test panel with it before we hit this car with it, but it comes highly recommended in the spray painting groups on Facebook. A lot of really good painters that I know, like Russ Heath and a few others, they use it. They'll swear by it on their high-end work. So I thought, with this being quite a nice high-end car, that I'd try something a little bit different, and also try a little bit of a different clear coat out for you guys as well, rather than using the same old everyday Chronox 610 that I use. And I have to say, I did really like it. When I first posted up the pictures of some of the gun finish work that I got with it, it felt like the whole internet blew up actually, on Instagram, saying that I was going to have real problems polishing it. Now this McLaren, I left this around about a week after I painted it before I flat and polished this, and I had no issue whatsoever with the Menzerner range that we use in fully flat and polishing this car top to bottom, and I mean top to bottom, every single inch of it to a mirror finish. And it polished up lovely, it polished up like butter. Now when we did the clear coat, we did use the standard hardener, we didn't use the fast hardener, so I don't know if that does make a difference, but I did find that the standard hardener was nice. It gave a nice flash off time and quite a nice open time as well, so I had plenty of time to work with the clear coat as I was going around the car and make sure that everything was nicely wetted out in each area before I moved on to the next area. Especially with this being quite an awkward car in a way, because bar the bonnet, there is not one flat panel on this car that you can really paint. Everything's like this, where it's got curves dropping away, There's a lot of underhangs and contours to get around with the clear coat and with the base coat, so having that extra working time really is a bonus on a good clear coat like that. And I have to say, I would highly recommend the clear coat. So this is my new gun that I've just done for myself in the shop. I've put our logo on and our hashtag up the back, and this is my clear coat gun. So this is the Segola 4600 Extreme 1.3 DVR clear, and that is what we will be using for the clear coat on this. So it is the 1.3 XL setup. I am running this today at 2 bar pressure. I've got it on full fan, and I've got it around about 2.5 turns out, and then I think I send it out to about 3 turns out when I get a little bit more comfortable with how this clear coat lays, because as I said, this was the very first time that I've used this clear coat, so for me it was getting used to the clear coat rather than getting used to the gun, because I didn't know quite how long of a flash off time I'd have and quite how susceptible it was to running. So it was a little bit of a feeling out process on the clear as I went around the car, but by the time we got into the second coat, we really turned this thing out and then really wet the car up really nicely. So for clear coat on this, I'm going to go around this as carefully as I did the Candy really. I'm going to go around all my edges, make sure that all my edges are nice and covered, and then we're going to go for 2 real good solid wet coats of the MIPA CC9. So for this, I think we added around about 5% slow reducer just to help the flow out on it and stop it flashing off a little bit too fast, because the heat was quite high in the booth, as I said earlier on. But that was again the main reason for having the heat that high, so we could get a real good lay down on this car and a real nice wet finish to it, so that I had a nice build when I came to flat and polish this. Because one of the biggest issues for me on this car when it first came to me was that the finish on every single panel was different. In some places it had no peel, it was a complete mirror finish, and in other places it had more peel than a brand new Range Rover, which if you've seen a brand new Range Rover recently, the peel on those is absolutely horrendous. So I wanted to make this, a full-on supercar paint job. We wanted this bang on. We wanted it to look like that 100 grand car when it left the workshop, so it had a full mirror finish over every single inch of the car that we painted, right the way even underneath the door lips here, inside all the vents, absolutely every inch of it got a full flat and polish. And if you stay till the end, we've got a few clips of the before shots of the car and also the finished shots of the car as well, so you can see what this looked like. So as I said, I'm going for the Segola 4600 for this, and as you can tell, this is not a slow gun either. This is really laying out quite a heavy layer of clear at this point. We're not exactly going light on the first coat. We're going to do 2 full coverage wet coats, so we're not going for a 70-30 coat with like a light coat and then a full wet coat or anything like that. I am literally just going to go straight out for 2 full wet coats. And you might notice at one point on the bonnet, when I get onto the flat area, I do turn the fluid out a tiny little bit extra, just so I can wet the bonnet out that little bit more, because obviously gravity does stop you from getting as much on the side of the car as you can on the bonnet. So every now and again, if it's, say, when I get to a bonnet or a roof, I might just open the fluid up an extra half a turn or an extra turn, so I can just wet those up that little bit nicer and get that little bit more of a build and flatter finish on a bonnet or something like that. The other alternative is that you can also slow yourself down, so you could slow down a lot more. But on this car, I wanted to get this on without any dry edges or anything like that, so I want to get round it not as quick as possible, but I want to get that really good build on there and that really nice wet finish. And you can already see the reflection that's coming up in it just from the first coat. So by the time we've put a real good thick second wet coat on this, after around about a 15-minute flash off to let this really tack off, make sure it's really sticky so it can take that next heavy coat, then we can end up with a real nice fully wetted out gun finish all over the car. And then we can go across it, denib it first, and then we went across with a full wet flat of a P2000, then a full Trizac at a P3000, and then we went for a compound and then a polish after that. And then, as you'll see at the end, the results on this car for me kind of speak for itself. I'm not blowing my own trumpet on that because I'm not that kind of person, but for the kind of car that it came in and the kind of car that's gone out, I'm more than happy with this job. I'm more than happy with the way that this car came out. And also from my point of view, this is obviously now something that we can use in our promotion, as far as the business goes. It's something that we can use on our advertising and that sort of thing, which will look really nice on our advertising. So, you know, as much as people say you're only as good as your last job, you know, you want to make sure that every job that you do really is your best job, because it is true, you are only as good as your last job. So for us, when we tackle a job in the shop, and I suppose I am a little bit strict on this, that I want every job to be better than the last. There was a few little niggly bits on this car that were not paint wise, but like lining up issues on the front bumper and things like that, that were bugging me a little bit. So I actually held this car back an extra couple of days in the shop so I could make some extra brackets and move some things around and take the front end back off and realign everything and put everything back together, just because it would have kept me awake at night to know that I let a car like this go out with such a nice paint job, but then with a bumper that didn't quite perfectly line up to the bonnet. That really would have bugged me, and I would rather the customer wait an extra day or two and get the car back the best we could give it them than just say, alright, well, let's get it out and get paid for it and someone else can worry about lining it up. It's just, that just isn't my way of doing things. I would rather have this car right, and get it out of the shop once than have it come back for any work in the future because of something that we missed or a shortcut that we took or anything like that. That's just not the way that we do it in our shop, and I know not every shop works that way, but for me that's the best way to be. I'd rather just do the job right. So as you can probably tell with this clear coat, I'm not exactly hanging around, and we had no issues with anything runs or anything like that with this clear coat either. It really stuck well, and for the second coat I really did turn it up that little extra bit as well and try and just see how far I could push it and just how much of a nice laydown you could get. So for this second coat we are running a full 3 to 3.5 turns out on this Segola, which if anyone's used one of these 1.3 XLs, you will know that is a lot of fluid. It is not a slow gun as it is, so really winding this gun out with the help of a very nice clear coat as well. I have to say this MIPA CC9 is an extremely good clear coat. The laydown and some of the gun finishes you can get with this clear coat is phenomenal, to be quite honest with you. I've no issues whatsoever with any solvent pop, no dying back during a bake cycle. Once I had baked the clear coat and I flat and polished some of the parts, like the smaller parts for this car that we painted separately, like the mirrors and stuff, I flat and polished them straight off bake and there was no dye back or anything. They polished up beautifully. I mean, to any of the people that said that, you know, this stuff's hard to polish, personally I found this polished like butter. It was just absolutely lovely stuff to polish. And as you can probably tell by how this car is coming up at the moment, it's also really nice stuff to spray. It almost felt like a bit of an effortless clear coat with this gun, to be honest with you. I think it really suits the Segola and the heavy output of the Segola, because the Segola is quite a heavy applicating gun. A good quality ultra high solids clear coat like this in a gun like this is just a match made in heaven for me. I really enjoyed painting this car, and like I said before, it's in a way it's a little bit of an awkward car to paint because of all the lines and all the curves and everything in the car, but for me that makes it quite a nice car to paint. It's a little bit something different to the norm. You're not just painting a flat door or a flat boot or a tailgate, you know, and that sort of thing. You know, you've got all the edges and all the curves to work around, and it just looks so nice when it's finished, and it's got that real nice fresh glassy coat of clear coat all over it. It really does look a really nice car. And for someone who's not really much of a car man, It kind of pains me to say that, but it was, and it did look, you know, an extremely nice car when it was finished up. And as much as I've not always been a fan of painting candies, I have to say the Candy Red on this car is an absolutely stunning colour. Outside in the sun, which unfortunately I didn't get a chance to take any pictures of before it left, just because of the weather here in the UK at the moment. But outside in the sun, this car absolutely pops. And even in the booth or in the workshop, it just looked like such a really nice colour, and really sort of shone through all that nice ground coat through the candy layer on it. It was just a really nice car to paint. And I suppose, you know, that's just me being one of them nutters that really does love my job, but I do love what I do, and I do feel blessed that I get to do it for myself, and especially blessed that I get the opportunity to paint cars like this for people, you know, and put a car like this back to being as good as factory, or if not a little bit better than factory, and put our full level of detail into it in the shop. And it's not a car that we were rushed on, you know, we had as much time as we needed to work on this car when it was in, so I could take my time and really make sure this car was A1 when it was completed, and basically the best that we could put out, really. And it was kind of strange because, like, I think the day that this car came in, I also had a HGV in that I was working on, and a little Ford Fiesta and this McLaren to start, you know. And for me, I don't mind if I'm doing a McLaren or a Ford Fiesta or a Range Rover or any other car. You know, for me, I just love to paint. It doesn't matter what car it is, how old it is, how much it's worth. I just love getting in the booth and putting paint down. And as much as sometimes I do find, you know, the week's worth of prep that you put into this car a chore just so I can spend one day in the booth painting, I quite happily spend as many hours as it takes prepping a car like this just to spend that one day in the booth painting it, because it's something that I really enjoy, and it's kind of like, I don't know, in a way, kind of my peaceful space is to get in the booth, stick my headphones in, and just start chucking a lot of paint down on a car. It's definitely one of my favourite pastimes, so to speak. And for me, painting has always been more of a hobby than a job, you know. So for me, painting a car, whether it be this or any other car, it's not a job or a chore. It's something that I love to do. I get up every day and I love the job that I do. But I guess you guys that are watching these videos probably already have figured that out by now, that I am a bit of a nutter and I do love my job. So we are getting very close now to the big reveal on this car. So in a minute we are going to switch over to a few pictures and the little walk around that we showed you in the first video, just a quick little walk around video of how this car came in. And then we're going to take a little look at the pictures of this in the booth, and then a full walk around of this car in the booth, so you guys can see what it was like when it was all finished up, and obviously see all the black bits and all the accents that we did to the car as well. We changed the boot, or the bonnet as it would be on this, to black. We changed the roof, the underside, the spoiler, the rear diffusers, even the exhaust tips and everything we changed over to black as well, to completely change the whole look of this car, to be quite honest with you. And it was done. It doesn't look like the same car by a mile to what it came in as, and like I say, I'm quite proud to have been the guy that was asked and given the opportunity to turn what was a nice car into, in my eyes, an exceptionally nice car when it was all finished up. So I will leave you guys to watch these final pictures. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you again soon for the next one. Bye for now.